Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, number 4. And I'll admit that every time this book comes out, I get excited. But Ninja Turtles was one of those early on comic books that got me into reading when I was a kid. Sadly, it was the Archie Comics ones. I wish my parents would have bought me the old school Ninja Turtle books, but it is what it is. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this series, but I've noticed that when issue 1 came out, there was a lot of buzz about it. And then after that, it just kind of was like radio silence. Now, let me know what y'all think about it, but for me, I think what really is starting to kind of kill this book is the delays. I mean, this started back in October of last year, and it just, each time, each book comes out, it just feels like it's longer and longer. Now, I can appreciate if a book's saying it's going to delay if they have to, tinker something, like maybe rewrite a part of a script or touch up the art or something like that. But, if it's for silly reasons, whether it's, all the variants aren't printed or, which in my opinion, that's like the dumbest reason. But it is what it is. The book's out. I'm excited. I feel like that if this stayed on more of a schedule, we wouldn't have had such a problem. Now, if I can get the cover to stay, all right, now we're good. That's the downfall of this too, this being such a giant book. This is not a normal comic format, so it has that kind of graphic novel bounding. So when you're trying to hold a camera and do a review, you have it's a whole thing. So with that said, let's talk about who worked on this book. This is Kevin Eastman, Peter Liard, and Tom Waltz. Story, script, Tom Waltz and Kevin Eastman. Layouts, Eastman, and then pencils, inks, Esau and Isaac Escorza. And there's everyone else working on the book. And of course, Ninja Turtles was created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Liard. Now, we open up on some action. It's like, yes! Because a lot of the modern, from the last 3 issues, other than issue 1, like 2 and 3, was a lot of, Michelangelo coalescing and moping around the old lair. And then at the end of last issue, April kind of shows how she wants to use Professor Honeycutt and what she hasn't planned for Baxter Stockman since, what's his name, Harato, who's the new leader of the Foot Clan, has eyes everywhere. Like, it's essentially, this is a Orwellian dystopian New York that we're looking at here. And then we notice here how this is what is her name? Casey Marie, I think is her name, which is the daughter of Casey Jones and April O'Neil. And she's really taken a shine to Michelangelo. And we're just thinking, wow, they're kind of close, as where they both kind of seemed a little at odds against each other the last few issues, where, she's saying, I don't need your permission to go on patrol, etc., so forth. But here you see, he's saying, do what I say, Casey. And she says, yes, Sensei. And so right here, this sort of reminds me now, again, Kevin Eastman has said several times that one of his big influences was Frank Miller. And I think that was one of the primary reasons why he wanted to tie the Ninja Turtles into the Daredevil universe, which we've talked about in the past. But here, this reminds me of The Dark Knight Returns, where we have an older Bruce Wayne, and then we have Carrie Kelly. So I think this was kind of Eastman's idea of doing a Dark Knight Returns, or in this case, the cranky old Ninja Turtle. And as you can see, the main artwork is decent. The consistency of all the issues thus far have stayed. I hate when, you get, maybe 4 or 5 issues into a book or an event, and you start to see the artwork change. It's just like, that's a little too abrupt. Can you at least keep an artist for 10, 20 issues before we get a new artist? But with time constraints now, I can kind of understand, so I'm glad that they wanted to keep the consistency of this book. Now you're wondering, why is Casey calling him Sensei? And we'll get into that here in a minute. But here, what's happening, this is taking place in like the here and now. Michelangelo have decided to do a full tilt assault against Baxter Stockman, which was what kind of was the cliffhanger of the last issue. But you've noticed, you're like, wow, Casey Marie's actually kind of being more disciplined, and her technique of martial arts looks a lot better. And you're like, did I miss something? But what I liked about this book is, it'll kind of go all around. Like here it'll say then. And you see her on a punching bag. And you see this voiceover, saying her technique is decent, but she's developed some bad habits. And we notice that Mikey's watching her do her technique from a distance. And, of course, I love how the brothers are always shrouded in shadow to show that they're a part of Michelangelo's imagination, but still very much a part of him. And we see Leo saying, being interesting to see what she could do with 10 years of real training. And then Raph's like, yeah, except we don't got 10 years. And Don, he's like, I wonder why she cut her hair. And so you see she's worn out. And again, you remember how Mikey was always more the, Michelangelo was a party dude, and he was always more laid back. But listen to how he talks now. He says, well, besides you getting your cardio in, that was just about useless. And so she goes in, Michelangelo says, okay, well, hit me as hard as you can. So it's like, okay, Tyler Durden. And he's just like, yawn, your legs are weak, slow, but not as slow as your fists. And he just schools her, just blow after blow. And Alakai says, please feel free to take this time to think about how you could have done all this differently. And you can tell she has her father's attitude because she is a firecracker. But she also has, the brains and compassion of her mom. And Mikey says that he's going to offer to train her. And then after all that anger, she's like, right, a sensei. And then I like how as she's walking away, she goes, thank you, Michael, sensei. Yeah, no problem. Now get a haircut. Kind of echoing what Donnie said in his mind. And it's just a really sweet moment because Mikey says the reason he wants to train her, he says, we're essentially family. But if you're willing to learn, it's going to be my way or the highway. So she goes, a real teacher. And it's just a really sweet moment. Now there is a moment here between Mikey and April. We learned something about Casey Marie. I don't want to give away. You're going to have to read the book to find out why she's extraordinary and that she catches on quickly. And then I like, again, I've said this in each review, but the tonal change of the book, how after all that, April says, you still haven't told me what happened when he went to Japan. Now, if you remember from last issue, if you don't, go back, check the review that we did on issue 3. What happens is after the death of Raphael, we go a few years into the future. The Turtles are leery. They have a militia, and they're wanting to fight against the foot soldiers. But this, Raphael, in dying, put Hiroto's mother, Kairi, I think is how you pronounce her name, into a coma. So there's talks of peace. There's supposed to be peace talks and accord in Japan. So Donatello and Splinter take a makeshift shuttle to go to Japan. And when they leave, there's this barrage, this fight against Baxter Stockman. Wow, I'm actually explaining the book. Sorry, guys. I guess because I just read it, so it's fresh in my mind. Anyway, leaves the compound in New York in disarray. And Michelangelo says after the blast in New York, I was in a haze. I got on the first flight I could to Japan to try to save Donatello and Splinter. And he actually comes across Clan Hamato. So this is the clan that Splinter was from. And this guy, what was his name? If I pronounce this wrong, feel free to make fun of me down in the comments. But Shinichiro, Shinichiro. So if I get that wrong, let me know. But he's part of Clan Hamato. And Mikey, he's trying to use, the Bushido, not the Bushido code, but trying to use the etiquette that Splinter has taught him. But he's going, where's my brother? Where's Splinter? And I like how Shinchiro here gets very quiet. There are people, creatures, teachers, warriors, heroes, and legends. And then the tonal change. And Shinchiro here says, your father, Master Splinter, was all of these. So Shinchiro joined Splinter and Donatello for the peace accords. And right off the bat, Donnie and Splinter are thinking that something is amiss because the peace talks are supposed to be in a graveyard. And needless to say, things go south very quickly. There's a panel I'm looking for here. And you can see that Splinter has had enough. And he goes, Oroko Heroto, while you still breathe, you will call me Master Splinter. And these moments with Splinter and Donatello and Clan Hamato against the Foot, oh my god, this is probably like the best part of the book. It's very much like a Shogun novel at this point, and you guys just have to read it. The artwork's on point. The tragedy, the drama, it's absolutely phenomenal, and I'm not going to give any part of this book away. You are going to have to come read it. But, of course, it ends in tragedy. Michelangelo says that, the clan offered for him to stay, but he says it was just too heartbreaking. So he started making his way back to New York. And then we skip back over to the present. And what's interesting here is we see the ready room, everyone talking about how this assault on Roosevelt Island against Baxter Stockman is supposed to work. But you know how no matter how well you plan something, shit's always going to go south real quick. So there's this juxtaposition. So we got like the training room where he goes, and we have years of surveillance, and he's security is limited, fairly limited. Honestly, believe he thinks no one would be crazy enough to mount a serious attack. And then we come into the reality, and we see how everything is under heavy fire. So we see how this plan of April's has gone south real quick. Michelangelo did not want to go along with it because it was just a suicide mission. But, he echoes what his brother's saying in his mind that, yeah, it's maybe suicide, but, being, what do you call it? Being not a samurai or a ninja, there it is, and having honor, he's not going to abandon people he cares about or people he considers family, which is April and Casey at this moment. Now, I don't want to give away any more of this book, but the way April comes rolling in against the Mousers, the way that they fight Baxter Stockman, it's a decent read. Like you'd think, they only have 5 issues to get this story told. And I will say that I feel like they've masterfully done a well-written job of going in the past, like the way distant past, to show the fall of Donatello and Splinter, and then kind of going into the more recent past of how Casey is now training with Michelangelo, and we get some more backstory on her, and then go into the present. I think if this was like I don't want this to sound like derogatory, but if it was like a lesser writer, I don't think that this book would have been handled as properly. Eastman and Liard, this has been their creation for years and years and years. And so they know these characters inside out. As I said in the first review of this series, I believe this script was kind of like their final chapter and what they wanted to talk about in terms of the Mirage Studio Ninja Turtles. And that's why they're doing it and kind of revising the script. And so far, it's been a good read. The delays are driving me nuts, and I'm pretty sure that issue 5, which is going to be the final one, is going to take forever, and we probably will not see till summer. But at least in the meantime, we've had 4 really great issues. Again, delays, I feel, is what's kind of killing the book in terms of chatter and people talking about it. But if you guys can get your hands on this series, it's definitely worth to have in your collection. So with that said, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and see if you can get all 4 issues. Issue 1, I will say, is going to be probably the biggest SOB for you guys to get a hold of, so good luck there. If you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little heroes and a half shell bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with y'all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.